Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Cowboys of the Osage podcast. Hey, it's old Cody over here, and as always, I got my Osage podcast. Hey, it's old Cody over here, and as always, I got my co-host right here, rodeo historian himself, Mr. Jimbo Snively. Hey, Jimbo, what's going on over there today?
Hey, Cody boy, it's just another great day in Osage. We've got a double treat for everybody today. We've got J. Paul Williams and his dad, Jake Williams, from right over here in western Osage County. Got a nice ranch over around Bareback. And J. Paul was a great steer roper, 5-time national finalist, Rookie of the Year in '93. We all remember when he won the Ben Johnson here a few years back. He's won Woodward, McAllister, San Angelo, you name it. He's either won or placed in almost every big rodeo in the country. And his dad was a lifelong, or still is a practicing auctioneer. And he rodeoed back in the day in the 50s and early 60s with people like Bob Wagner. He brought in a beautiful tooled bag that he won at Burwell. And we're going to get some of those stories out of him. So, guys, we appreciate you coming in.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming in. We sure appreciate both of you. Jake.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
When did you first start wanting to mess with the rodeo life?
Well, I tell you what, I graduated out of Fairfax High School in 1954. Me and Bob Wagner took off the next morning, went to Sulphur, Oklahoma. I won 2 seconds down there, gets $180, and that's the most money I ever seen in my life.
Never another poor day.
Never see another poor day. And we took off, and we rodeoed all summer and didn't come back till like in October, November. And we went places I never did think we'd ever see. and I seen things that I didn't think I'd ever see. And but it was real experience, and that got me started rodeoing.
You say Bob Wagner.
Mm-hmm.
Could you fill us in on who that is, just for everybody who don't know, being you was a personal good friend of that man?
Yeah, Bob Wagner, he lived right over there, right straight west of, he was raised right straight west of Braden Schoolhouse over there in western Osage County. And he run with George Braden and Frank Braden and them, and kind of got rodeo this and rodeo that, and then he got so that he kind of went to riding old cows and this and that, and he just kept getting better and better. But he was just like me, didn't have no money to go nowhere. And, we hitchhiked everywhere we went. But Bob, he wound up being world champion, and I wound up coming home. And that was back in 1958 when I quit. No, that was, it was quite a run. And, when you ain't got no money and you don't know nobody, you do lots of things and different. But, we made it back, and here we are.
When you first started your bull riding days, did anybody around there help you out or anything, or did you just kind of figure it out on your own, Jake?
Well, if you remember right, I doubt if you was old enough, Fairfax had a roundup club over there, and they had a rodeo every Saturday night or Sunday night, and we rode cows. They roped the calves off these cows, and we old kids rode the cows all the time. And anyway, it just kind of kept getting better and better, and and on the 4th of July, them ranchers would bring a bull or two in, and we rode bulls, and that was a whole different story. But anyway, that just kind of kept going on, and it just kept getting a little better and a little better. And I know one day, me and Frank Braden and Bob Massey went to a rodeo like down at Billings, Oklahoma. I know it's cold and snow was still on the ground, and I can't remember the guy's name that had the stock there, but he had a bull that nobody had rode, and I had him drawn. And so I'm down there getting my rope, and And he hollered at me, and he said, come on. He said, you ain't going to ride him anyway. So I just done my rope, and I got off of him, and I said, mister, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to bet you all the money I got I can ride him. And he said, I'll bet 100 you can't ride him. And I said, if I had, I wouldn't have to be here. But anyway, I hollered at Massey and I hollered at Frank, and I think we had $12 or something like that between us. And I told him, I said, now I'm going to ride this thing, and I'm going to ride him to catch pin. Yeah, come on. Well, anyway, I ride him, and I don't get off of him. And I hear him hollering, get off, you're going to run my bull.
He didn't want you breaking him, did he?
No, but he got even with me that fall. I brought him in Guthrie and say he like throwed me plumb out of the ring. but I rode him there. And anyway, it's, you just go on and it just gets better, as you go, you learn more. But we went to, like I say, went to Sulphur down there. That's the first RCA rodeo I went to, and I went up and get my money, and old Carl Claxton, he was the secretary. He said, let me see your RCA card. I said, I don't got one. He said, you'll have one or you won't get your money. And he charged me, you could join the RCA for $25 then. $25 and $600 worth of insurance. And that's when I started, and from there on, we went.
I don't know. Last time I bought my card, how much was yours, J. Paul? About 600 or so?
Yeah, they went up. Used to be 500, 450 to 500 for a long time, but I believe it's over 600.
I would assume, because I think it was about 5.5 last time I bought mine, and it was
Probably
5 or
so.
6 years ago. So.
Cody, Bob Wagner, he turned out to be one of the all-time great bull riders. I mean, he went to the finals like 8 times and was the world's champion. I don't mean just going to the finals, slipping in 12, 13, 14. He was like top 3 every year and won the world in, I think, 64. But he could really ride.
That first year, I think he was runner-up.
Yeah,
now, I want to settle something on Bob, though. It's spelled Weg, but he said it Wagner.
Wagner, W-E-G.
Okay.
N-E-R.
Yes, sir.
Bob Wagner, but everybody called him Bob.
Yes, sir.
He went to that first national finals, and I think went maybe as a leader, and Shoulders had to win the average to beat him, just barely caught him. It was a real close race.
We got a real famous picture of him back here sitting beside Freckles Brown when Freckles had the collar on him and everything. Yeah. So it's going to be up in the museum here pretty soon for everybody to see. It's a real famous rodeo
He
picture.
was tough, too. I was talking to my Uncle Joe last night, and he said that he was at Pendleton one time, and it was during the bull riding slack, and Joe walked down there to the chute to watch, and said this bull in the chute reared back and then threw him forward and either hit his head on the bull or the chute. He couldn't remember. But he said you couldn't hit him by any harder in the head. Knocked him out. Said they drug him off and said front of his face was bleeding, blood coming out of his ears. They put him on a stretcher and took him over under the grandstand. And said about 10 minutes later, here he come running back. Said, I want my bull. I want my bull. And said and as far as Joe remembered, he think he placed on the bull. But that's pretty tough.
But I'll tell you a good Bob Wagner story. I don't know where we was coming from, but anyway, we made a rodeo down there south Pikes Peak on the way to Cheyenne. And but anyway, we left down there and we got a ride with old Buddy Heaton. He was going to take us to Cheyenne, And but anyway, it was unbelievable what we went through. And I told Wagner, I said, first stop sign, I'm a-getting out.
You got to fill us in a little more on what y'all went through with Buddy, because I knew him pretty well.
But anyway, we get out. It was in Boulder, Colorado. And we get out, and that's the last we seen him. And we caught a train up there. We caught the train, and we was sleeping in the depot, and a policeman come down there, and he woke us up, and he said, you boys got to get out of here. You can't sleep in here. We told him what we'd up against. We had to wait a while. And he said, well, come up to jail with me, and you can stay in the jail. So we got up there, and we stayed in the jail that night. And next morning, we gets up, and we go out to Cheyenne rodeo. And old Buddy come up there, and his old head was about that big around, all swelled up, and some college kid just beat hell out of it. You know, down there's one of them old joints. But anyway, we got Wagner the first round. Well, I'm getting into my story. Merle and Pauline Davis, they always got 2 stalls up there. They stayed in one and put their horse in the other one. But anyway, we got up there, and so Merle and Pauline stayed in one. Me and Wagner, Johnny Baker, and Grant Marshall stayed in the other deal there. Well, I think Wagner win the first round, but about the second performance, he won $640 a round paid in Cheyenne, 1954, 5, 6, or somewhere right in there. Well, he just left us. You know, he went to the big hotel where it cost $15, $18 a night to stay. But we stayed there. But anyway, we had quite a time. But that Heaton, though, he was something else.
You know, when Buddy got out of prison, I don't know, I was, I was 12 or 13 years old. He moved in with us for when he got out of the halfway house. He was living with my grandpa at the time, and the last time I saw Buddy, he stole my bicycle and sold it at the horse sale and during the tack part. So that's the last time I saw him, but he was sure a character. You know, Jimbo, that guy, he wasn't invited, but he went when President Kennedy was inaugurated, and he had a broke to ride buffalo, and he jumped that booger in the inauguration parade, and the Secret Service was going to shoot Buddy. And Kennedy told him not to shoot him, and heck, he had his buffalo bow, and he took his old hat off and all right in front of Kennedy, and there's a real famous picture of it.
I've seen it.
Yeah, anyone can Google it if you're looking at it. Buddy Heaton, he's one of the most...
I've heard a lot of Buddy Heaton stories.
Yeah, he flew a plane through the Gateway Arch. He, you know what else he did? You know what he went to prison for? He's dead now, so we can talk about it. He got, you remember when calling cards, you could have a calling card and charge a long distance phone call back to your house at home. So he had, of all things, the IRS's calling card number, and he was making calls all over the nation with it, and they gave him federal time for it. So, Buddy Heaton.
Yeah.
You know, one time at Houston Astrodome, this is the last Buddy Heaton story I'll tell. One time at the Houston Astrodome, he was up there in the rafters, and he kept telling everyone he was going to jump out of there. He was depressed about something, this and that. And it went on for quite some time. And he hit up there, and he threw a dummy off there. And I guess it was attached to a rope, and it swung, and it barely touched the arena floor and swung back up. And a lady had a heart attack in the stands when he did that.
He was a clown for people that don't know who he was.
Yeah,
you know what he did.
Bullfighter.
Clown, outlaw,
right.
movie star, little of all, Buddy Heaton.
I'll tell you one more Buddy Heaton story.
Yeah, I believe it.
I broke my leg in West Plains, Missouri. One year over there, mud was about 9 foot deep, and Bill fell with me, broke my leg. Well, anyway, he broke one bone in it, and so we went up. Tom and Mike Neesmith took me up to the hospital. Well, hell, it was an old folks' home instead of a hospital. And anyway, the old doctor, he said it, and he said, I'll put a cast on it in the morning. I said, no, you put a cast on tonight because I ain't going to be here in the morning. And I told old Mike, I said, go cut me a board about that long so I can press the clutch down on that pickup. Well, okay. Well, anyway, I've been through that country 100 times, and they're just hitchhikers everywhere. And I said, I'll get me a hitchhiker, and he'll let him drive. And I picked up probably 5 of them, and none of them went over 2 miles, so I just quit. But anyway, I made it home, and I stayed home about 3 weeks. And I cut me an old boot and made me a boot so I could get it on and put my spur on. And Genoa, Nebraska was the first place I went. And before the rodeo, I'm in the arena leaning up against the fence, just like that, letting the sun, warm. and all of a sudden somebody stepped on my leg, right where it was broke, and it was old Heaton. And I said, "Buddy, if I could get up here, I'd kill you, you dirty so-and-so." He said, "Yeah, but you can't get up, though, can you?" I said, "No, I can't get up." Boy, that hurt, man. Oh, man, right there where it was broke.
Good Lord.
That was the end of my Heaton stories.
You know, back then when you were riding, Jake, it wasn't very uncommon for a man to ride with a broken leg or a broken arm, was it?
No. And, but, you know, like I say, we was, Ken Roberts entered me at Madison Square, and I was supposed to go with him. And St. Joe, Missouri was the last rodeo before we went to New York. And he had a little bull, old number 9, I'll never will forget him. He was a little blue bull that just spun 900 miles an hour and you couldn't fall off of him. And I prayed to draw that thing. And I went all 2 years before I drawed him. And I drawed him in St. Joe, Missouri, the week before we go to Madison Square. And I'm so damn tickled, it's unreal. Because I know that you can ride this thing and win around on him. Well, when I called for him, he went out about 2 jumps, didn't cut her back, and all of a sudden he cracked her back the wrong way. I've got him good to go to the right, and he went to the left. He jerked me down, broke my back in 4 places. And I laid in St. Joe Hospital for three weeks up there. But anyway, you know, that was just part of bull riding,
wasn't it?
Part of bull riding, and that was...
Did you ever make it over to Madison Square?
Never did.
Never did make it.
Never did make it.
You know, it sounds to me, Jimbo, that Jake probably would have, had they had a formal national finals, he quit the year before they had the formal national finals. He probably would have made it year in and year out in his younger days, being the top 15. No problem.
Sure might have, you know.
About 2,500 would put you in there, you know it.
Yes, sir.
Did long there, 2,500, 3,000.
And I'm sure you had plenty of years where you would have definitely won that kind of money.
Well, you know, the most I ever won at one time was 1,200, and I done that in Memphis. We got 7 bulls down there. We got one every day for 7 days.
You don't hear about that too much anymore.
And I rode 5 out of 7, placed 4 times, and win $1,200. And they paid me in cash, and I was so scared that I went up to the bank and marred that up to my bank. I wasn't about to carry that much money. I'd never seen that much money. And
That was a lot of money back then.
well, it was, you know.
I would have went to the bar and got rolled probably, Jimbo.
Right.
Wouldn't come on with any of it.
And
So what was the last bull you rode?
well, the last one I got on, I didn't get him rode, but was in Springdale, Arkansas, 1958, 4th of July. I'll never remember it was E7 of Butler's, and he throwed me higher in this building.
You knew it was time to quit then?
Well, that was the last one I ever got on. And I've, you know, I've been on some of the rankings they had and rode a few of them and got bucked off a lot of them, and you know, but you made $100 at a rodeo. You was getting along pretty good back then.
What about Freckles Brown? Were you ever around here too much?
I knowed Freckles. I knowed him pretty well. Mm-hmm. Knowed who he was and everything.
He was supposed to be a real nice guy, wasn't he?
He was.
That's what I've always heard.
You know.
What made that tornado bull so hard to ride, Jake?
Well, I tell you what, he was so muscled up and so stout, and everybody took a hold of him, and you couldn't ride him if you took a hold of him because you ain't that stout, you know. You had to use your feet. I never did ever get on him, but I seen what you had to do to him. And that same way, that Butler's had a bull called 106, and he was a bull that probably weighed 1,900 or 20, somewhere along in there. He was a big bull, muscled up. And I never seen him ever. Nobody rode him over 2 jumps. And I had him in Elk City. And when I called for him, I went to spurring him. And I rode him and he jerked me down over his head right at the whistle, and Todd Watley was judging, and he said I slapped him upside the head, but he said that's the first time I ever seen him rode, but that's just the way it goes.
The thing about Freckles, he was riding his best at a time when most guys had already quit.
Yeah.
And that was what was strange about Freckles.
And this is going to be recorded, and
Yeah, you're recorded right now.
yeah,
Jay.
I know it, but I can tell you a good Freckles story. And
Well, if you think we need to wait till after the show to do it, we
No.
will. If you think that,
no.
if you think the world can hear it, go ahead and tell us.
We went to the first one in Oklahoma City. Me and my wife and John Nunnally and Gene Nunnally and their people around. We all went down there, 4 or 5 of us couples, And we're sitting there, and the bull riding's going, and Freckles getting ready to ride, and this dude sitting down there about 4 seats down below. He was hollering up here to his buddy up here about 4 or 5, and you couldn't hear for him. I was yakking around, and finally I just got tired of it, and I said, "Why don't you sit down and shut up?" He did. And when after Freckles got done riding, he come up there, and he said, "Oh, like what you said to me." And the fight was on. I tell you, right up in the grandstand. And boy, then.
Now he's telling you a story. It came from Oklahoma City at the national finals. That's what he's telling you right
I
there.
got that. But yeah, thanks for clarifying that for everybody.
Prime time right there.
Yeah, right in the.
Yeah, but anyway, I was quite a ways off, and the time I got out, I done punched him out over here. And old Big John Nunnally, he walked out. Next thing I know, the blend over here behind the seat. Old Big John Nunnally just pushed me out of the road. And his buddies was coming up the steps, and he just stepped out and said, "Come on up, boys." That was the end of it. And that was the only time anybody ever got a standing ovation from the crowd. Right there. Them people up behind, they wanted to do it so bad. Anyway, I had to tell that story.
You cleared them out.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I've seen stuff like that. And near beer stands, though. They was always near the beer stand.
Well, I presume he's been
Yeah, beer usually has something to do with it.
What about Casey Tibbs? He was pretty big in your era.
Casey Tibbs is one of the greatest bronc riders to this day, as far as I'm concerned. And when we went to Cheyenne, the first time I was ever at Cheyenne, they gave him $500 to mount a horse out called Pretty Boy. And that was the greatest bronc ride you ever seen. About the second jump, he just stuck his arm out like that with the rein, and just rode him without a rein. And people just went crazy up there. That's the greatest bronc ride I ever seen. But I know Casey pretty good.
I still think he might be the most famous rodeo star of all time. In his era, he was the biggest. I mean, he was on Life magazine, the cover of Life magazine, and stuff. He did a lot of TV work and movie work and stuff back then, and he may have been in his era the most popular rodeo guy of all time.
When he was coming, everything was purple.
Yeah. He wrote
purple strap.
Yeah,
everything. But no, he was one of the greatest bronc riders I ever seen. And
There's another guy from your area over there, Buck LeGrand.
mm-hmm.
What do you got on him for us? Buck LeGrand.
You ain't got enough time to listen.
Well, just for everybody that don't know who he is, Buck LeGrand, year before last, was one of the first rodeo clowns to be inducted in the Cowboy Hall of Fame in Oklahoma City. From right over here, near just on the western side of Osage County over here. He was the first rodeo clown for the first NFR in Dallas, Texas in 1959, and he did all the other big shows. So, and Jake knew him pretty good.
Yeah, I knowed him real well. I used to travel with him a little bit. Not too much, but some. Because you didn't know what was going to happen. But no, he was...
He wasn't as bad as Buddy Heaton, though, or...
Well, no, he wasn't.
Be bad if they got them two together in the same rodeo, probably.
But Buck, he was something else. And, I'll tell you a story, then I'll let you go. We was in Rapid City, South Dakota, and rodeo was over, and he was been taking a few old pills or something, but anyway, I'm going to ride home with him. And he said, why don't you drive and wake me up in Omaha? And I said, okay. So we get in his old pickup, and here we go. Well, hell, I'm about to run out of gas. And I stopped, and there's a station along the road there. It's closed. I won't go Buck up. And I said, Buck, wake up. I said, we're out of gas. So this guy, we got him up, and we got the gas and paid him. And I said, how far are we from Omaha? He said, where? Well, I know I was in trouble. Well, I drove 150 miles straight west instead of straight south. And we had to be in Alexandria, Louisiana that night. And we went through Omaha going 85 miles an hour and got through Wichita down there when they was all going to work at Boeing. And I mean, tell you one, we didn't kill half the people. And he called Phyllis, his wife, and told her to have a trailer hooked to 98 Oldsmobile and have that mule in that trailer. We get down there and we just step out of the old pickup right in the car. And when we pulled in Alexander, Louisiana, they was playing the national anthem. And he run back there to get his old mule. This mule's upside down like this. Like this. And no telling how far we pulled that old mule upside down. But he went 100 miles an hour. I can tell him that. And I tell you, you didn't. And but I'll tell you another Buck LeGrand story.
All right.
We was in West Monroe, Louisiana, and after the rodeo, the motel was right alongside the road, and right across the road was a beer joint. And he said, let's go over there. And I said, I ain't about to go over there. He said, come on, you. And I said, no, you go. Just go ahead. And about straight up midnight, he come in there. And if you ever noticed Buck LeGrand, he had a big scar above his eye, come down the bottom of his chin. A guy hit him over the head with a beer bottle, and the beer bottle broke, cut his face there. And that night, he opened the door and he let his old trick dog run out of the motel. The first the car come by, run over him, killed him, and about an hour and a half later, his wife called and said she had a baby boy. All three of them things happened right there within an hour. And no, it's something else, I tell you.
Why do you think so many good cowboys came from over in your area, rodeo cowboys?
Well, I don't know. It's just kind of ranch country, and everybody was rode up amongst it, and everybody kind of carried a rope or a gun or something, But no, I don't know.
I always kind of wonder if it's some of the remnants of the 101 ranch. A lot of those rodeo guys from them early days. A lot of their what they did just kind of got passed on over here, and same with that, like that Dewey Roundup over there. I'm not sure. I've just always kind of wondered that if that's one of the reasons so many of the great cowboys kind of just settled in this area.
I bet that had something to do with it, Yeah, I really do. Because that ranch was about one of the biggest out there, and had so many cowboys. And it was gone time we all got big enough to know anything about it, And sure was. But no, the rodeo was a good life, and I mean, it was better than working.
Yeah. I know a lot of rodeo guys. They don't work. They work real hard for a little bit just to support the rodeo habit. And then they hit the rodeo. They don't. Whatever they're doing and what they're doing for a living, that's just something they're doing between trying to get money gathered up to go to some rodeos.
Right.
I've been there before.
But gas was 18 cents a gallon back then. And you could go quite a ways, And, well, I'll tell you a story there. I borrowed $10 off somebody, and I went to Baton Rouge. And I ate dinner in Texarkana, supper in Baton Rouge. and still had money left out of that $10. The gas was 18 cents a gallon. But when I left down there, I borrowed $10 off Gene Peacock to get back home on, but I didn't do any good. And hell, I got up there and gas had went up to 28 cents a gallon. I thought, uh-oh, how am I going to do this now? But anyway, down in there a lot of soldier boys. And I picked me up a soldier. I know they're coming up to Fort Smith there, and I said, can you drive? And he said, yeah. I said, you ain't got $1 or $2 to put a little gas in, have you? He said, yeah, I have. Well, I woke up. We was parked right in front of an army barracks. I thought, God almighty, they're going to get me, they'll give me the penitentiary here for being out here on this army base. But I finally got out of there, though. But I know the guy that run the station there at Fort Smith. And I run down there and I said, say, I need some gas to get home on, and I'll give you a check, and it ain't worth a damn, but it will be good in 2 days. He said, well, fill it up then. But you always want to remember them things.
J. Paul.
You're not done with him yet?
Oh, yeah. We're not done with him yet, but...
Yeah, you don't need to be. I think he's just getting warmed up.
He's just getting warmed up.
Yeah.
He's just getting warmed up. We'll let him chime in here on you some. What about you? When did you first start getting interested in this rodeo business?
Well, he come with a rodeo background, and then in our neighborhood there was 2 families that I started with, but I had 2 older sisters, and they were 10 and 11 years older than me, and so they were getting drugged around to the horse shows and your local rodeos and junior rodeos and so forth. And then, as a kid, you're walking around dragging your rope, and you're having match ropings with the other siblings of other families around there, and it just eventually something that seems to seep into your blood, and that's just kind of what happened to me. I can still remember the old Cockerburg Junction Arena, which any of these guys that this is my first time to come to the museum, and I know about everybody. But anyway, about all these guys that roped before my time, they eventually went through Cockerburg Junction Arena right there on Highway 60. And I can still remember having match ropings out there underneath them old blackjack trees out there. The local boys with the case bolts and Daniels and raspberries and all them. While the older siblings were rodeoing, we weren't old enough, so we were either out there fishing or roping or fighting or, just being kids pretty much. But that's how I kind of got started.
Did you ever consider going rough stock like your dad?
Yeah, that's the way when I started, that was, I loved it. Started riding steers and bulls at a young age, and then you were roping on one end, and it was it was great because you could rope, and then you didn't have time to think, and you went down, you warmed your rope up, and then you put it on, and you done your deal. And I had several friends done the same thing. We all done the same stuff. We all roped, and we rode steers, and I really liked the steer riding, and then you kind of graduate into some littler bulls and stuff like that. But my dad just asked me, when you get about 16 years old, when it comes to riding bulls, you're going to graduate into a whole new kind of an experience, not from the little jump kickers around. They're going to buck. And he just asked when I come 16 if I would end it, and then I stayed true to my word when it come to the rough stock end of it. I never had any ambition to do any bareback riding. That just never really turned me on. I like watching it. I don't think I could do it. And then the bronc riding, there was really nobody around to show us, so it's just one thing that we didn't have.
Jake, did you ever do any of the other rough stock events while you were rodeoing?
Yeah.
We didn't even ask you that a while ago.
I rode bareback horses, and I got on them.
What's the difference today in bareback riding and then when you were doing it?
Bareback rig.
Yes, sir.
That.
Well, there's a lot of people that's watching this and listening to this out there that have no idea what a bareback rig is. Can you just explain it to them a little bit? Even probably some of the guys rodeoing today don't know probably what you had to use back then.
Well, we had a bareback rig. It's kind of made out of leather with 2 rings on one side and the other, and you just gird it up like a saddle, and it had a handhold on top of it, you know, and the handhold was kind of turned a little bit where you could just hang on to it like a stick or something, and you better be pretty stout too. And I tell you what, the worst I ever was in my life, they used to have rodeos at Shidler on every weekends, and my mother and dad, they never hardly ever come to see nobody or nothing, and I got in the bareback riding up there. And say this big stout dude jerked my hand out of the bareback rig, and I went over the back of him, and he kicked me with both feet, right on both legs. I thought he broke both legs. And to save my life, there stood my mom and dad, and I wanted to cry so bad. It hurt so bad, but I wasn't about to. No, you got to balance and strength on that bareback riding. But no, I didn't. But I'll tell you another story, okay?
Yeah.
Well,
That's what we're here for.
That's what we're here for, Jake.
we was at Phillipsburg, Kansas. Way out there. When you get to Phillipsburg, Kansas, you're halfway wherever you're going. And I won the bull riding there, rode full bulls, and had me a pretty buckle and all that stuff. But anyway, somebody mentioned Billings, Montana. And Ben Wagner, Ronnie Rosen, Dwayne Howard all said, boy, we'd like to get to Billings, Montana. Well, there was a guy from down in Texas. I can't never remember his name, and he roped calves, but he worked, and he was on his vacation, and that's where he come to Phillipsburg. And we made a deal with him. If he would take us to Billings, Montana, we'd pay all the gas and pay his entry fees up there. And he took us to Billings, Montana. And entry fees was $10 up there. And I said, just put me in that bareback riding too. Now, you know, I'm pretty smart because I just won the bull riding, and you know, well, Everett Coburn's got the stock, and his bareback horses are bigger than the saddle broncs. I got bucked off 4 times, and I was never so glad to get out of any places in Billings, Montana in my life.
They got some big old horses up in that country.
Oh, God, yeah. God almighty, just jerk your arm plumb off. And Bob Wagner was with us. But anyway, he placed up there. He won like $260, and they paid him off in silver dollars.
Oh.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I've heard my grandpa talk about that.
And he had a hell-tucked, oh, scary.
Yep. Have a whole suitcase full of silver dollars when you leave town.
Yeah, sure did. And what was real funny was the calf roping was out on the racetrack, and the riding events was inside, about like Posca. And the old announcer, he said, somebody tied a calf in 12 something. He said, that's the fastest calf ever been tied in Billings, Montana. In a little bit, somebody come out and ties one in 11. Oh, and 1 in 10. And here comes Sonny Davis. He ties one in 9 something. And this old announcer says, I don't believe it. I just don't believe that anybody could tie a calf in 9 seconds. And he tied those big old Hereford calves. And anyway, that was quite a deal there. I never was so glad to get out of one place in my life.
There's a long ways back home, too, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't remember how we got home. Where we went from there.
J. Paul, who helped you the most get started in steer roping and helped you with your horses and stuff?
My steer roping career, like I say, I was around it quite a bit. We had 2 families that lived, one family just lived up the hill from where I was raised, right there on Arkansas River at Ponca City. The Hainsingers, and they all roped calves, and they had a daughter that was a year older than me, and she roped. But then, if you're going down the road, the Bradens, Frank and Carol, and they roped steers, and they went everywhere, Bucky and Barry, and they roped. But what got me started roping steers for real, though. I was around it as a kid, and I was between the Ben Johnson and them. But my senior year in high school, I roped with a guy named Ryan Barnes. And Ryan's dad, John, lived right here, what they call the Nature Conservancy. It was a Chapman Barnard Ranch at that time. And we roped together our senior year in high school, and then Ryan was already tying steers down. He roped real good, and John was he roped steers back. I seen Ben Patterson, I think.
Yeah, I remember him. Had a big bay horse.
Yeah, but anyway, and anyhow, I believe it was Bill Reed. They had an arena. Bob Jones had an arena right out here, what they call Round Mound out here east of Pawhuska. And I didn't have I only had to go half a day, I believe, in high school my senior year. Well, anyway, I would slide by and either meet Ryan at Bob Jones's, because Bill had steers in there, or I'd slide by. They had a carpentry class. I'd pick him up. Well, we would go out there, and Brian would be tying steers down, and I wasn't tying steers down at the time. And one day John was up there, and he said, "You want to start tying steers?" And I said, "My dad would love for me to, because my dad, that was his favorite event, being around the Ben Johnson, and which is something y'all might touch on a little bit, being involved in the introduction of the ropings and stuff. He just loved the steer roping, and he always wanted me to do it, and here was my opportunity. So John had a big chestnut horse at his mane roached, and man, he was big. He had a big old long neck out there. He said, "Go warm him up and come back." And he said, "I'll show you what you need to do. We'll break away some steers." And so I warmed him up, and I came back, and John had a pigging string in his hand, and he roped my saddle horn, and he pulled that string. And if you know John Barnes, if you've ever shook his hand, it'll terrify you, because he's a big, strong man. And he took that string and he run it across my right leg, and he said, "Now tell me how you're going to get out from underneath that." And so I just kind of, like a monkey in a saddle, I just tried to switch around, and he just pulled that down, and he had me trapped in that saddle. He said, "Now, this is how you tie steers down. It's all control of your left hand. It's in your reins. Move that horse's head to the right and watch what happens." And as soon as I did, that gap came off that string, and I get my leg out from underneath it. And that's how I started roping steers. They had some old big corny steers, had big horns, and that arena of Bob's out there was big, and they would just haul the mail. And I thought my horn rope I headed for Ryan, and Ryan heeled real good. Well, anyway, being over to the left side of a steer and roping their horns was something that kind of came natural to me. Well, when I got on this big chestnut horse, and John did not want you running to the left side, and that was a mortal sin. He wanted you to the right or behind him. Well, my God, them things are hauling it, and they got their tail curled over their back. They looked like they were out there a mile. And I don't know how many I run that day. He was tired of working the chutes, and it was hot, and I couldn't catch him. And I was done. I come back, threw that rope down. I said, "This is the dumbest thing I've ever done." And he said, "No, you'll get it. You'll get it. Just keep trying, keep coming back." And so finally I just got mad, and I learned. It took a while. It was ugly. But eventually I learned how to catch them steers around the horns, way out there like that. But that's how I got started roping steers, with John and Ryan Barnes, right there. And for those you don't know, I don't know if Rocky Patterson, which eventually became a world champion, he started a year or two before, just like I did, with the same guy, with the same arguments, with the same everything. Rocky was around a little bit when I started, but he was older, so... But that's how I got started.
We used to have the club ropings out at Bob Jones's back in the 80s.
Yes, sir.
The Osage Steer Roping Club. I roped out there a jillion times.
Yeah.
Yep, John's one of the best teachers out there too. Really is. He's taught a lot of guys how to do it, and I believe he made the national finals his fair share.
Yeah.
Sure.
Me and Ryan sometimes. Me and Ryan didn't run straight and narrow, and John's a very big, strong man, and if you've ever seen him mad, it's very intimidating, and sometimes I don't think he's real proud of some of our actions.
Yeah, he probably stayed mad about half the time at Ryan, for sure. I know Ryan pretty good, too.
Right, but they had an arena right there. It's Chapman Barnard. We'd rope up there, too. It was a little bit rocky, so they didn't want to tie steers down. That's why they come down here at Bob's and rope, and carpenters were around there, Larry and Danny, and they were roping. They all tied steers down.
Where was the arena up there? I don't remember.
Bob's Arena.
No, at the Chapman Barnum.
Right there in the headquarters.
Okay.
They had two bunk. Larry, I believe Danny lived up around a corner. Larry and Danny, but there was two bunkhouses set side by side. The boxes backed up right to the porch.
Yeah, we don't.
Yep.
Did you and Ryan rope together in high school?
Yep. Yeah, we did. And then
How did you fare? How did y'all get along?
We won state, and then we had a chance. We went to the state high school finals were at Shawnee that year, and then I believe he missed our second one. I believe. I'm not for sure, but I believe that's how that went.
I believe you. I believe you for sure.
I'm sure it wasn't my fault anyway.
Did you go to college rodeoing?
Yeah, me and Ryan, I tell you what, here's another opportunity I had to steer open, and I didn't know it at the time. I wound up going to Murray State in Tishomingo, Oklahoma, and Ryan tried to get me to go with him to Uvalde, I think Southwest Texas, and their coach at that time was Roy Engelmiller, and I didn't know Roy, and then later in life, after rodeo and I met him, that could have been one of my regrets not being around him, because Roy's a great individual, and what I seen, he's a great coach. It looked to me like.
Heck of a roper.
Yeah.
Heck of a roper.
Yep,
he could rope steers, anything.
Yep.
You know, Tony Rayner went to college with him,
Yep.
and that's when Tony Rayner was big, fixing to make the national finals, roping calves before his steer roping career, and somehow him and Roy ended up having a match somehow, and Roy took him to the house.
I believe
took him to the house and showed the young gun up.
Yep. Scott Snedeker wound up going to school down there under Roy too. So if that tells you anything.
I think Scott's one of the best ropers I've ever watched roping steers, just, on his length that he has and his ability to catch about every time and his hustle down the rope and get his hands on him, and then he gets his hands in the air. He don't let much adversity get him down. He just keeps hustling, and he ties a lot of fast cattle. A lot of fast cattle, old Scott Snedeker.
Well, you made the Rookie of the Year in '93.
Yes, sir.
How'd that go? Obviously pretty good.
What about filling your permit? Tell us about that one first.
Okay, I'll just tell you, this arena here at Pawhuska, Oklahoma has been great to me. I won my very first belt buckle there. I was thinking on the way over, and that was in 1979, and I still got that buckle. I wore it just smooth. They had a junior rodeo association here, and we would come over, my sisters and whoever. We used to pile up four-door pickup, and whoever got in it, and that's just the way we went. And then later on, I come back. The first PRCA rodeo I entered was Pawhuska, and it was Pawhuska Elks at that time. Mm-hmm. And I entered I don't think I entered the calf roping. I was still roping calves, but I entered the steer roping, and I placed. It was mud, just as mud as could be. And I was 20 or 21 years old, scared to death, and I placed on my first steer. I come back. At that time they traded. And I traded with somebody, and I traded into the last performance on Saturday, not knowing. Well, heck, I had the only dry run. And I had it hung on one right there to win the rodeo, win the round and win the rodeo. And I strung him, and I couldn't hold him down. And but anyway, I won money on my first one. And I came back. Claremont was our second rodeo, and I know I won. I think I won second there. I'm not for sure. But it took $2,500 to fill your permit, and I done it 5 rodeos. And that was 2 of them right there, and the rest of it was roping calves.
And what year would that have been?
That would have been 92.
Okay. And then you made Rookie of the Year in 93.
93, yes, sir. That was, I believe I made, if I'm not mistaken, y'all have the records, but I believe I made it sitting maybe 12, 13, 14, something like that. And it was $12,000 is what I'd won. And that was, at that time, they didn't have but maybe 25, 30 rodeos. I don't know now. I'd say it's 60, 70 rodeos now, or maybe even more.
You can really make 50 for sure, I think.
Right. But anyway, I'm almost positive this is the year. So the last rodeo of the year was Del Rio, Texas, and I went with Buster Record and Todd Casebolt, and I'd won just a little bit of money, and that let me make the national finals, and it was going to be my first year. So when I left there, I was feeling pretty good about myself. I did something I was feeling good. So anyhow, Buster had an old Dodge pickup, had an overhead camper, and we rolled. I'm driving. I said, hell, I was so happy I'd drive the whole way. It didn't matter. And you get north out of Del Rio there, and there was a border check station. And I didn't know what it was. And there was a guy standing out on the porch, and he just waved at me like anything else, and I just waved right back at him. And I get down the road 10, 15 miles in one of them green Suburbans, lights, 2 of them. One pulls up beside, one pulls behind me, and they pull us over. And they're asleep in the sleeper or in that camper. And so I stick my head back here. I said, Buster, you might want to get up because these guys are mad, and I don't know what I've done to make them mad. So anyway, when I got out of the pickup, this guy was mad at me, and he said the reason he pulled us over is because Oklahoma didn't have to have a license plate on their trailer,
right.
And Texans did, and we didn't have a license plate on there. But he was mad at me he said, I was trying to flag you down. And I said, well, I thought you were just waving at me,
Right.
So anyway, he wasn't happy, so we come on home that night. We didn't get in any trouble. He just gave us a scolding, and we went on.
And that was the night that you knew you clinched your first national finals?
Yes, sir.
After Del Rio Rodeo?
Yep. If you've ever been to Del Rio, that's off the end of the earth.
I was there just the other day, about 2 weeks ago, J. Paul.
Yeah.
We stopped and ate some barbecue there on the way through.
Yep.
Tied a steer in 10 in Pendleton.
Yes, sir.
How do you do that?
Well, there was a story behind that too, and I tied my first one down, and in Pendleton at that time they didn't have one for what we call one for everybody. If you had 100 ropers, they'd have 100 steers. Pendleton just threw together what they could, and if they had 50 ropers, you're allowed to have 25 steers. Well, some of them are guys practice steers, and some of them are bulldogs, and so it was real hard to tie 3 down up there. And I had came back and on my second steer, and I remember it happened fast right there across the line, and I was 18 on my first one, and then I come back, and when I threw my hands up, the guy if you know what Pendleton is, they come flying off that hill. Well, they used to have a hand pulled barrier, and with guy with the flag. But when I threw my hands up, it was Jade Robinson's dad, and he was judging, and he's standing for me to you, and he just looks at me and he says, J. Paul, he said, I didn't see you coming. I didn't pull the barrier. And I said, well, it says 11 flat right up there, and that's going to be winning around by a mile. And I'm thinking I got screwed out of money here. And he said, I don't care. We got to rerun that steer. And so I'm at the bottom of the list, and they brought that steer right back, and I got lucky as a dumb 21-year-old kid come across there, and that's tied him the second time.
So you tied him in 11 and tied him in 10.
Yes. Yep.
It's a pretty good steer.
Yep.
What about your short round steer?
If I'm not mistaken, I made a short round there I didn't go a lot, but I made a short round there about every time, and something would happen. I believe it was that year, Buddy Lytle was flagging, and this steer comes out and hooks a hard left, and I stand up to rope him. When I do, I rope around the horns, I rope around the front foot. So I'm like, hell, there weren't my chances, because if you make the short round, you had a chance to win the rodeo because the steers were that bad. So as I'm going down the track, the steer's slowing down, and I get just about the buck and shoots of Pendleton, and somebody in the crowd just hollers. They say, you got him. And when I look down, this steer stepped out of it with his left foot, and when I jerk my slack, I can slick around the horns. Well, I just go right by him, tie him down. Well, it's under the 25, the 25-second or 30-second time limit. And I look up, and Buddy, he had done rode off, and so he comes loping up, he's a great big guy, and he come loping up, and he said, I can't give it to you. And I said, it's around his horns, it's under 25, why can't you? He said, we're not going to talk about it right now. We got to go on with the rodeo. So I stood off over to the side and waited. And at that time, they had a rule that I don't know, it could still be the same way, but at that time, if you have an illegal head catch, once it's illegal, it stays illegal. And so he said he couldn't give it to me. Well, I come back later on, and I don't think that was true. But anyway.
I think it used to be a rule, but now I see at the national finals the guys fishing out the legs in the team roping all the time.
Right.
They're riding around. Looks like they even practice it sometimes at home, probably. So, at one time it was a rule, I know, but I don't know if it was a rule during that time.
At one time, that was a legal catch too in the RCA.
Yeah, I definitely. When did they change that? In
I
the
really
80s?
don't know.
I think it was around 84 they changed it was because of another guy from right here in Osage County. They changed the rule just because of him, Jim Davis. His horse would be ducking out so bad. A lot of times he would have that front leg and do it, and a lot of times he wouldn't have a trip at all and go ahead and tie the steer down.
Well, right, but back in the day, they didn't have a legal catch in the steer open. It wasn't slick around the horns like it was when I started.
Well, when Jim won his first Cup World Championship, you could miss a trip, have a slick horns, or you could have slick horns and a front leg.
Right. Well, the steers were so big at that time. Those guys practiced trying to rope that front leg at one time. I know that.
Well, yeah, it would definitely help keep them down.
Yep.
Without a problem. You wouldn't even have one ever probably try to get up on you. If they had the front leg. It's just about maybe like Brandon one or something where you hold that front leg down.
True.
So, yeah, it'd definitely be a better catch if it was still legal today. Who's some of your hauling partners you hauled with through the years, J. Paul?
Let me see. Jim Davis was probably one of the main guys I went with the most, and Jim was raised just not very far from where I was raised here in Ponca.
You talking about his dad Merle earlier, and he talked about Merle earlier,
right? And then Jim was living in Abilene, in between Abilene and there, and I would just pretty much go down and spend the summer with him. But then when I came back, Kim Ziegelgruber out of Oklahoma City, another good friend of mine named Chuck Thompson. We went later on. Tyler Mays from Ponca City. Whenever he was in his rookie year, he went with me.
Made the finals twice, Tyler.
Yeah, right here in Pawhuska. Rod Harkness is who I kind of started going with, which most steer roping rookies, they kind of fell into that.
Yeah.
And then I went with Chet Herron. We went together quite a bit. Then he started going with Rocky.
Yeah, he went with Rod his rookie year too.
Right.
Old Chet did.
But two of the guys, and I'm not saying, and I'm afraid that I might not say everybody. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Oh no, yeah.
Because eventually you go with everybody. You know?
Oh yeah, especially in our circles. I mean, heck, I've even ridden with you before when I was a kid.
And then we all piled up. But two guys I learned as much from would be, and I spent a couple summers with him. J.D. Yates would be one.
Oh wow.
We had fun, learning experience. And then 1 year, I went the whole year. I went with Guy Allen and Will Yoakum.
Oh yeah.
Guy was
he really helped Will that year too. Those couple of years he came.
That was and I've heard people say this before. When you go with world champions, you'll get tired of pushing their steers in the short round, and you either got to learn how to be in the short round with them, or learn to accept carrying their rope bag. You got one of the two, and when you're going with Guy, and Guy was still Guy at that time, he won the world that year. You'll get tired of. You're going to be at the short round. Simple as that. So you just as well be there entered, and that's the way that went.
He ups your game a little bit to be traveling with fellas like that.
Yeah, and Jim Davis is the same way. Jim Davis is but a different kind of style. As Jim like to make fun of you, everything you done. You know, you couldn't eat cheeseburger right without him making fun of you.
You know, I've always considered J.D. Yates one of the best pure ropers I've ever seen in my life.
Right.
Maybe the best. As far as just roping anything, whether it be horns, whether it be feet, no matter what it is. Him and maybe Bobby Harris and a couple guys like that, or some just some very, very pure ropers. It doesn't matter what you're roping. They're really about the best. I mean, they know how to rope a neck perfectly. They know how to rope horns perfectly.
Right.
They know how to rope feet perfectly.
It's just putting up with them more than anything.
Oh, yeah. But, shoot, that's a badge of honor to get to hang out with old J.D. Yates and Guy Allen and all of them.
But Chet here in town, we went together quite a bit, and it was real easy because he could just, if we were going east somewhere, I could just slide by and get him, and then if he was going west, he'd just slide by and get me, and then we'd go get whoever. But I went with Buster Record a little bit too.
Another world champion.
Yeah, Buster and CA and those guys.
What was it like winning the Ben Johnson here in your backyard?
Well, that particular year, I didn't get to hang out much because we had to be in Pecos, Texas that next morning. But it was, I guess it was on your bucket list as something that I always rope good here, but it seemed like something would always happen to me. And it was usually my ignorance cost most of it. But
you know, one time you talked about Buddy Lytle a while ago. I think I remember a controversial call on
It wasn't
Buddy. It wasn't Buddy. Mm-mm. Well, it was one of the big flagmans of the day, possibly.
Larry Dawson.
Right here at the Ben Johnson.
Yep.
What happened that day? I've always wondered ever since I was a kid.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, that was a life-changing moment for me right there. I was either going to win or place in the first round, and Buddy flagged me out, said I didn't have a hooey on him. Well, I would have never threw my hands up if I didn't have a hooey on him. Well, if you knew who Larry Dawson was, Larry Dawson's had paws like a grizzly. Mm-hmm. He's a great big man, and here's my 130-pound out there just cacking at him like you can't imagine. I'm mad. And he treated me just like Buddy did. He said, just go on. You didn't have it, and you know you didn't have it. And to this day, I still think I did. But either way, it's a controversial call. And when we had words right in front of the grandstands right there. And after thinking about it later on that evening, I was, you just don't call their judgment. You just don't. Nobody else stepped up there, and I was very let down with my actions that day. And I never had words with another judge after that.
I think every rodeo cowboy has to learn that a time or two. One old wise guy told me one time, he said, Cody, you win a few, you lose a few.
Correct.
They're probably going to give you a few, and they're going to make a few bad calls. And that ain't exactly how he said it, but
everybody's human. But and they talk about High Plains justice too, or karma coming back around. And I'm sure it come back and bit me at one time, but later on I was very let down with my actions, and I did, and it changed me. And I was 19 at the time, so 19 or 20.
Is that all the older you were?
Yeah, I think that was the first steer I run to Ben Johnson.
Hey, what did Kurt Robinson used to, how did he used to announce you?
I don't know.
The J. Paul Williams, the steer roper with the lawyer name, is that what it was?
That was Clem McSpadden.
Okay, that was Clem McSpadden.
Named like a Philadelphia lawyer's name.
Yeah.
Yep.
Clem.
He also used to announce that this guy don't care about what the cost of rice is in China or America.
So, I'm sorry I cut you off when you were asking about that. When Jimbo was asking about your Ben Johnson win right here.
Right.
And I remember that day too. Pretty good.
Right.
Watching you win that.
Yeah. It might have been 110 degrees that day too. So.
At least.
But we had to roll on out there, and I didn't get to hang around.
I remember they wasn't done with the 6 seconds on the clock, and he was already throwing his hat and celebrating in the arena, riding back up towards the steer.
Yeah.
That was a really great day for a...
He knew he had a half hitch on that one, didn't he?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. It was a really great day for one of our local legends to win one of our biggest events in the area. So one of the biggest steer open events, period, I'm going to have to say,
Yeah.
What about when you won the San Angelo Roping Fiesta?
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty hollow ground, just kind of like the Ben Johnson here for those folks out there.
Right. That's the last big thing in South Texas, as in Western sports, you could say. And, they used to gather, because when you get down there, San Angelo, the big ranches, and when I first started to go down there, I think they said there'd be 6,000 people there, and it was the same thing. They kind of gamble. They would have their pots up, and if you know what I'm talking about, they would have a drawing, and you put 10 or 20 or whatever you put into a hat, and you drew a name out, and that's your roper for the day. And they would do that here at Pawhuska too.
But down in San Angelo, they'd get it'd be big money on these pots.
Supposed to be the biggest Calcutta going, is what I always heard.
And
as a kid.
it wasn't uncommon from what I hear for guys to shoe your horse from the fence and everything else down in San Angelo, because the Calcutta money was so big. And I'm gonna get into these Calcuttas in just a minute with Jake.
Yeah, he'll have a good story about coming from San Angelo. But that particular day right there, your dad was still in stock producing. And he was kind of at the end of the year, and they were having trouble crossing steers, and he had all his stuff left.
I remember they were
real big, fleshy, kind of thick neck steers.
I remember your first one. You roped him, and he kicked 3-4 times before he ever done anything. Yeah. You don't see that J. Paul doing that very often.
Right.
That's when I thought this guy might win this roping today, and I was just a kid. So
yeah, he had a lot of kind of high horn bremers and stuff that you didn't really want to rope. They weren't, but when you get in a position. But my first steer, I still remember, he was a brown steer, probably had horns like my arm.
I remember him
and
too.
And they stuck straight up like that, and
had a big old belly.
Yeah. Well, and I tell you what, and they were fresh. And San Angelo, same thing. They got a hand pulled barrier, and it's a real short box. It ain't like Pawhuska. Pawhuska has a real long box and a long score, but here at San Angelo, it's a long score and a short box, and you've got 30 people just standing around you, But anyway, I remember that. I'll remember that run. That steer kind of fell off over to the left, and when he stuck his head up, I had it on him, and that'll probably come off there, and I had to get up by him to get knocked down, and that's what happened. But then they brought a real nice set of you had a real nice set of steers, a short round. They were fresh too, and they were little. And that little steer of mine, I roped him walking, and he was still walking, and I tied him down, and anyway, this old man down there used to sit in the very first box right there. I remember they were counting the six off, and it was quiet, and they, the judge was counting it off, and old big Frank down there stood up. He said something to the point like 3, 4, 5, 6. Show me the money. And it was just loud as could be. Everybody heard it, But anyway, I come down there, and guy he come around there to me after that deal was over, and he said that was roping him walking like that. He said I was surprised you got that one caught. Is what he said. I was proud of you for having faith in me one more time.
That was a good day down there.
Yeah.
So, for everybody that don't know what like the Ben Johnson roping is or San Angelo, can you just tell them a little bit about these ropings?
Yeah.
They're not your typical rodeo or anything, J. Paul.
True.
And I want everybody to know exactly what we're talking about because we take it for granted a little bit.
These are invitational ropings, and they're at that time there's 4 main ones. There would have been the Ben Johnson or Pawhuska. San Angelo would have been the last one, the Fiesta.
Spicer Grip.
The Spicer Grip was in the middle of August, and then they had the Windy Ryan, which was Memorial Weekend. I believe that's right. But I was fortunate enough that I won all of them. I don't know. And another thing, they're invitation, and they're
not just anybody can enter.
No, they're invitation only.
They got to contact you.
San Angelo used to be the toughest one to get into.
It still is, I think.
It may be, but they're 3 and a short, and they rope for more money. I mean, we and the RCA, and I think it's still the same way. It's $100 a steer is what goes in the pot. Well, I think at one time San Angelo might have cost $1,000 to get in. I know it costs $750 here, $500 at $500 or $600 at Windy Ryan, $500 or $600 at the Spicer Grip out there, and
that Spicer Grip roping, it's came a long ways.
Yeah, it really had. I think I won the first one they had. It was at Steve Norcott's house, and
you won it more than once then.
Yeah, I did. I had a chance. I had my last year got up out there one year to win it pretty good one year, also. But that was another place that was real good to me. Was there at Hereford.
Those guys know how to put on a roping out there in Hereford. I gotta take my hat off to the Spicer Grip Committee. I guess it's the best invitational roping I've ever been to after besides the Ben Johnson right here, of course. But after I went to it a few times, they really love the sport of roping out there, and you can tell.
Right. If you're a sports fanatic, that Spicer Grip weekend is great. They'll rope kids, and they'll have a match roping. They'll have an open team roping where they let them out and go get them, and all the boys show up, and it's good to watch. And they'll have a pro-am roping too. The girls' breakaway was just coming in at that time, so I'd say that it's real big by now there also.
It's the best of the best.
Yep.
That week. That's week right after Dodge City. Right after Dodge City, if anyone wants to go out to Spicer Grip.
Yeah, San Angelo was real. They were real particular at one time. If you didn't send they sent it used to come certified, and they had all these paperwork you had to fill out. And if you didn't send it back, they didn't care who you were. You had to send it back yes or no. But if you just didn't send it back, they didn't care much for that.
J.P. Wickett, he made the finals 3 times before they invited him. He said,
"Yeah, and I'm like I say, sometimes I didn't appreciate things, and they invited me one year, and I turned them down and didn't go because it was in November, and I hadn't made the finals, and that Kurt Robson." He's the one that kind of got me in. Boy, he gave me a good scolding over that. He said, they'll never let you back in that. And I said, we'll see about that later on. And they didn't for a year or two, but then I eventually got back in.
I think you got to sit out 2 years or something a year.
I don't know.
There's something to that. They have a rule on that.
Right.
Jake.
Yeah.
You still awake?
We're talking about all these invitational ropings.
Listening.
Just about every one of them has this event before it all starts called some people call it the introduction of ropers, some people call it a Calcutta. Mm-hmm. What exactly is that for folks that don't know what it is? And then I want to hear a good Calcutta story from you.
Well, it's just kind of like a jackpot. But you got to bid to get it, And then, that's the roper you got
It's an auction.
at the auction. And, whatever he does, that's what you get. And gets pretty costly every once in a while,
It's kind of like horse racing where you set your own handicap with however much money you want to spend on that roper, I guess.
Well, at San Angelo roping, the first time he went out there, me and my wife Joanne, we went out there, and I heard that it was, just unbelievable. And Raymond Taylor,
Yeah, I knew him.
Yeah.
Biggest Calcutta player to ever live, almost. I think.
Yeah. Well, I kind of got to know him out here off of roping they had up west town here. But anyway, we got out there, and when I walked in, he seen me and he come over and he said, "You gonna buy J. Paul?" And I said, "What I hear, I ain't even got third enough money, let alone." And he said, "I set up the front table and you stand up over against that wall, and if you don't get him bought, I want him." He said, "I won't bet against you because you've drove all the way down here." I said, "Okay." Well, they start to Calcutta and they go on, and they'd be like 5 people put in $5,000 apiece to play that Calcutta. That's $25,000. Now, how you going to outmoney somebody? Well, I give $3,000 for it, and everybody down there was shaking their head, because that's first roping.
Low seller.
But anyway, what did you win? You win second, wasn't it? You won a second, and my $3,000 paid me $18,000 and some dollars. And when me and my wife left and coming home, I paid them in cash, and they had to pay me in cash. Well, I've got a sack this big full of money. We get ready to come home. She puts it in the glove compartment, just jams and gets up there. And we get up there South Abilene, and behold for devil, the city cop catches us up there for speeding going through this little town. We want to see your driver's license and the verification of your car. Oh my God, here this cubby old plum full of money, and she's like a coon, got her head down trying to get that out of there. And my God, we'd still been in jail if she knowed they thought we was dope dealers or something, And but you all remember Almond Fox?
I know him. Yes, sir. I remember him.
He was he loved to play Calcuttas, and he loved steer roping. Well, they had no airplane, and they flew out to them roping stuff, Well, he called me one night, and he said, "Be ready. We're going out to," I don't know what roping it was. Might have been San Angelo again. I don't remember, but anyway, I said, "Well, I can't go. I absolutely just can't go." And he said, "Well, what are you going to give for J. Paul?" And I said, "Well, if he's in the first 10, you'll get him bought between $3,000 and $5,000. And if he's in the last 10, you'll get him bought between $5,000 and $8,000. Well, they run him, I don't know, $6,000 or $7,000 and didn't buy him. And he wins the rope, and it pays like $27,000.
Yeah, if you knew who Almond Fox was, Almond was a very large man. I mean, 6'8", 6'9", just a very, very large man. And his stature, if you knew him and you've seen him, you could see him from way off. Well, after the roping was over, I had to go out in the arena, and I had to have pictures and stuff. And I could see him standing down the stands down there, and he was on a cane at that time. And he comes walking up there, and he's got a grin on his face like you can't imagine. And he's looking at me, and I walk over there to him, and I said, "You didn't get me bought, did you?" He said, "No." He said, "I run you a lot further than your dad wanted to go." But he said, "Guess what? We got second, third right behind you." And that's why he was grinning. So there's no telling how much money he had made that day.
Cody, the second time Joe won San Angelo, 73, I think, after the rope was over, somebody he didn't even know come up and just put $4,100 in his shirt pocket.
Yep.
Yep. That used to be common with those Calcutta guys out there.
Yeah.
A lot of times they'd give the roper 10% or something of what they won, so they might have won $41,000.
They would offer you that before you started. So if you win the roping, this is what I'll give you. if you don't, you might get a punch in the mouth. That's just kind of where a lot of them used to be.
I always tried to buy myself if I could, if I was already there and could afford it. A lot of times I couldn't, and could afford it to put the extra money in. We were already there, It was like entering another roping.
Right.
I used to sell the Calcutta out here years and years, and we're selling over there behind the bucking chutes. And I sell them, I don't remember who it was, but anyway, I sold them all and always hung around a while to make sure that something went wrong. Well, a guy come up there and whoever he did, he laid down exactly what he get for him. And the lady said, that's 5 times the money. Well, by God, I ain't gonna give 5 times the money. I said, well, that's the way it is. And he just got plumb belligerent. Finally, I got mad too, and I told him, I said, I don't know where you're from, and I don't give a damn. You better get on down the road. We're going to have a problem here. And as far as that goes, I don't want to ever see you back here. And, well, all the clerks, and we all went together and paid for him, and now we don't make about $200 a piece. But you run into everybody and every kind.
Yeah, I've seen several people not understand the times the money on the Calcutta.
I used to work with a guy that he was sicker than a dog Monday after the Ben Johnson because he'd bought Walter Arnold. I can't remember what he gave for him, but then he went up there to pay for it. It was 5 times the money, and his wife was mad at him. Walter didn't win a quarter, and boy, he was sick.
Well, he could have, though. He could have.
He could have.
Just as easy as he didn't.
I'll tell you another. The lady was clerk. She come running back there to me and said, we got a problem up here. And so I walked up there and I said, what's the problem? And she said, this fellow said he give $85 for whatever, right? And we charged him $100. And it was H.L. Todd. And old H.L., he was, he's pretty belligerent. So I walked up and I said, who is it? She said, that gentleman right there. I said, you tell that gentleman to pay you and tell him he just got crammed by the best auctioneer going. And I turned around and walked off. God damn, he got hot. And win 5,000 and something then.
Oh, H.L. His family was here in Pawhuska not too long ago. It might have been a few months ago now. Not too long ago. Time flies for me sometimes. And they said H.L.'s still kicking out there.
He was in a nursing home or something last time I knew.
Yeah, they gave me his telephone number.
Really? I haven't seen.
I don't know. I hadn't heard anything since then, but that don't mean anything.
No.
That don't mean anything. But yeah, they said he was in a nursing home. They gave me a number to call him, and I just ran across that number just the other day on my nightstand. So if he's still out there, I'm going to give him a call here in a day or two.
He was grumbling about something all the time. Every auction you went to, he was there. And cattle auction,
Well, what got you in the auction business, Jake? When did you first start messing with them?
Oh, God, I'd say I was running around them sale barns with my dad about when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, and we'd go to community sales, and I just kind of growed up around one of them auctions. And then they got to I sell all the junk outside, the hay and stuff like that, and I just kept working myself up, and I got up to be pretty big.
Do you teach yourself?
Taught myself. I just Bill Tackett. You might remember him. Did you know him?
I knew him.
I didn't know him, no.
Collinsville, one of the best auctioneers that ever sat down, and he learned me more and never told me nothing. I just watched him and listened to him, and I learned more from him and any living soul that I've worked with quite a few people. But just go on, and it got so when I quit when I hit 70 years old, and I was working I worked 6 sales for 40 years, every day. Some of them was big sales, Tulsa, Enid, Coffeyville. you'd sell 2,000 to 5,000, sold 7,000 cattle at Enid one day. And it just, you didn't, it's just job,
Yes, sir.
And you done your job and you got along with everybody, and it was, but kinda.
Unless they thought they gave 85 and you charged them 100, and they got rolled by the best auctioneer going down the road.
Say that lightly, kinda.
But I'll tell you, at Enid, Oklahoma was a big sale. 3,500 was average run. And you knowed everybody in the sale barn. You sold them jillion cattle. And you know just about who was going to buy the cattle. Well, one morning we started there, and we had a load of cattle, and I sold these heifers. Just as I sold them, the guy stuck his hand up. And I said, well, I'll get you the next one. I've done it 100 times, or more. And but anyway, and about 30 minutes later, I sell another load of cattle, and just I tell out, he sticks his hand up. And I didn't say nothing. I just kept going. And he got up, big old tall guy, probably 6, 7, or 8, had old horn rim glasses on. And he took about 2 steps down to the ring, run over to Pat Mason, jerked them old horn rim glasses off, and he said, "Give them to that SOB right up there so he can see." Everybody around there wanted to, help me out, wanted me to give them along with their glasses.
Oh, yeah. But they got a lot of mileage out of all that.
But the moral of the story is I wound up selling him 2 loads of cattle, 90-some thousand. He get Pat Mason a hot check, and Pat never collected. He died. He never got a dime out of it.
Could have been 4.
Yeah.
You're just trying to help him out.
I told Pat, ain't you lucky I didn't see him?
When did you start auctioneering, J. Paul?
Me?
Yes, sir.
I was just kind of, fed up with what I had going on. I wanted to try something different, and I'd been around it all my life. Like I said, born and raised in a sale barn. I didn't get he's always told me about the auction business, and, you're sitting there through them grueling hours like that. He always said, if you're sitting on the outside out there, you can buy 2 cattle. It'll make as much as them guys make all day. And he's told me that from day one. But, of course, I was, intelligent, and I wanted to try it, and I didn't realize how hard of work it was. But then I was given an opportunity to sell at some of these cattle sales, and the guys that own sale barns let me try, and I just didn't have it. I didn't have the right mentality, and I didn't have the chant. I didn't have any of it. And I just kind of, let it go. And then come later in life, it's just something. I work for a sale barn at Winfield now, and the man that owned that, he was in bad health, and I worked the ring for him. I worked the ring for him for a long time, and he was coming in bad health, so his son asked me to help with his farm sales a little bit, and I started kind of getting my chant back a little bit. And then I just told John one day, I said, why don't y'all just let me sell the cows every week? Because he was selling the cows at that time, and he had cancer, and he wasn't getting along, and so they talked it over, and that's what they done, and that's all I do. Then Justin, the boy that owns the sale barn, John's passed away since. He's let me sell, and I've kind of got my chant and got a rhythm coming now, and I probably could have an opportunity at it now, but I'm on the edge of 50 and got 2 boys now and got other things to do, so. But it's all right. I think it's a good way to make a living now. I really do. It's something that's slowly fading. It's a trait that's just slowly fading, and the guys don't work like that. I mean, one thing that he didn't elaborate was Enid also sold goats and sheep, and so he would be Tuesday at the cattle, and then he'd be Wednesday. If he had 7,000 cattle to himself, he would drive straight from Tulsa straight to Enid, then have 7,000 by himself. And I don't believe he sold on Wednesday, but then liable to go back out there, liable to have 3,000 or 4,000 sheep on Thursday by himself. Sheep and hogs,
Yeah, that was quite a deal. I sold Tulsa on Monday, then come back and sold Enid on Tuesday. And that old Tulsa yards was tough to sell down there.
Yep. And I had an opportunity. He let me sell a little bit down there when I first got started at Tulsa. And I just didn't have it. I didn't have the right mentality. I didn't have anything, and started buying cattle for other people too at that time. So that's just kind of how it went. But I'm getting to where The thing about an auction is it's just like anything else. The more you work at it, it's just like working out. Your muscles, once you get legged up, they always talked about like his day and these auctioneers today that work 3 or 4 days a week. It's a muscle, and once you get it in shape and you take care of it, you can go all day. And that's just the way it is. If you like it, and you do have to like it. You do have to love what you do if you want to be a cattle auctioneer, because they're the most overworked, underpaid auctioneers going.
Yeah. It's I do an auction once a year with J. Paul, and I did it with his dad one time. I about passed out this last year. It's been like a year since I'd done an auction.
Right.
And I ran out of air real quick, started sweating profusely real quick. And
Right.
the longer I did it, it came back a little bit somehow. I caught my second wind right in the middle of it. But, yeah, it was a rough one. It was a rough one for me, too, on that day. Mm-hmm. So you're a cattle buyer, too, J. Paul?
No, I don't do so much anymore.
Not anymore?
We just kind of take care of what we do. That's what I do for a living now, is in the cattle business. I run quite a few yearlings and stuff, and I just kind of help the neighbors out and so forth. But I used to, whenever he was still in the cattle business a lot, I was going to 5 sales a week buying cattle, and then I slowly, the people that I was buying cattle for, they started passing away, and they all kind of died off, you could say. And I was going to 5 sales a week, and then I cut back to 3, and now I just kind of go to 2 now, just buying for myself primarily.
What was the last time? What was the last year you made the finals?
Oh gosh,
Roping.
It'd be around 2000, probably 2000 something.
In the 2000 somethings.
Low, yeah. It was at Amarillo. I only went to Guthrie and Amarillo.
Okay.
I missed Hobbs. Hobbs was in there at one time.
Yeah, it was kind of sandwiched right after Amarillo, wasn't it? And then went back to Amarillo.
Something like that, yeah.
The steer roping finals, we were talking about it a while back. It's bounced around a lot.
Right.
Heck, it was in Pawhuska 4 times.
Right.
National final steer roping. It's been in Bonita, McAllister, Clayton, New Mexico, Pecos, Texas.
Laramie, Douglas. Of course, the first 2 were in Clayton, New Mexico.
Yeah, it's been around a little bit everywhere. Merle Davis made the first national finals, one of your old neighbors.
Probably did.
Roping steers, he did.
Yep, bulldogging too.
He was a good bulldogger. We got a picture of him bulldogging in here at Cheyenne somewhere. Big old fat steer, and got a picture of him roping a big old fat steer too.
Merle Davis, he was one of the first people I went to an RCA rodeo. Hell, he wasn't about 15 years old. Went to Longdon, Kansas, and he said, "Come go with me." And I said, "I can't get in RCA rodeo." He said, "I'll enter you." Yeah, got up there and thank I didn't place. And got my money, I don't know, $25, $30. That he was quite a character. I used to go to rodeos with him, and he'd haul me around, and he's a character. I was down there at his house one day, and you remember a horse he bulldogged off of called Old Red? Well, he had another horse he was making a bulldogging horse, and he said, "You get on Old Red and haze for me, and we'll try to get this horse going." Well, we did. He gets down, and when he gets down, that horse kicked him right there beside the head. And I mean, he was DOA'd. And I run up to the house, and I said, Pauline, I said, "Merle's hurt down here." God, I know that horse killed him, but he had that big old sunk-in place right there is where that horse kicked him right in the face.
He was a good calf roper, too, I think.
Yeah, he was.
What I remember of the guy, my whole childhood, he was the guy that opened the rope and shoot at Cheyenne Frontier Days up in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
He won the bulldogging at Cheyenne one year, Merle did.
I thought it was the calf roping, but it probably was the bulldogging.
No, it was bulldogging.
Go ahead.
When you made that last national finals, how long did you rodeo after that competitively?
See, my youngest boy's 7. Take 7 years off of now, 21, so it's 2014, give or take.
Yes, sir.
So it would have been right there, 13, 14, something like that.
And why'd you give it up? Or have you given it up?
Oh, I don't know. These are just excuses, and guys that are going to listen to this, and they've dealt with it forever. I was in I was at a point. I had my first child, and then my wife was pregnant at the time, and I went to. I mean, like I say, these are excuses, and some people call me lazy and call me whatever they want. But anyway, I went to Cheyenne, and it was muddy. And when it gets muddy, it gets muddy. And out of I don't know 150 or 60 guys, there's only 5 of us tied 2 down.
I remember that year.
So anyway, I was one of them. So I've got a chance to win a pile of money. Well, I crippled my horse, and like I say, my wife, she's probably 6-7 months pregnant, and you go from Cheyenne, then you go to Deadwood, then you go to Burwell, and so I had my family with me, and we were just taking a vacation. That's all we were doing, and they come back. They changed things. They brought the top 15 back to back. Well, anyway, my horse was crippled. I get to Deadwood, and I had 2 of the best steers on him, and he pukes it up and runs off with them, and I'm mad at him. And I get to Burwell, and I didn't draw very good, and I didn't do any good, and then we're having fun. So I had a week there for this horse. He just clipped himself just a little bit, so I kind of muted him up and go back to short round at Cheyenne, and they're walking fresh, and I got up there early that morning, and I got him, got him muted, and I rode him around that old big track and had him limbered up, and he never took a lame step one. And they called my name, and as I'm riding to the box, it's as if he had run a wheel off going in. And he just couldn't make it. And I had a real good steer that just let me, and I just roped him right across the line and got by him, and he didn't hit him. And I was so mad at the horse after I left there, because I had a chance to win a pile of money. I didn't have a chance to win the rodeo, but I had a chance to win a pile of money. And I didn't need a lot to make the finals at that time. And so on our way home, the injectors went out of our pickup. And I got my boy, my very pregnant wife, and we're running 35 mile an hour just to get home. And then when I go to Dodge City, I thought he would be sound enough, and he wasn't. And he puked it up on 3 runs. And after Dodge City, you're going to go to Spicer Grip, Lovington, and around. And good opens a lot of money up. And I just sit out there in the parking lot with my wife, and I said, here's a decision we got to make. And I just decided to go home. And that was that. I was in between horses. I was going to have to start another horse or buy another horse. I was going to have my second child. And I'd already rodeoed. I'd been rodeoing over 20 years, so there wasn't that much more for me to prove. Yeah. So I just come on home. I called Bob Schulte down there at Spicer Grip. I said, hey, man, I'm not going to be able to make you roping. My horse is crippled. I don't want to ride another one. And he said, all right. And I said, you just keep that $250 and you give it to your foundation, whatever you got down there. And he didn't. He gave me my check back.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he did. But anyway, that's how that went. I probably should have went on. I wish I had. My boys would be more interested in roping and riding and everything.
Well, they're not. How old are they right now?
7 and 9.
Okay, so it's not too late for them by any means. There's a lot of guys. Junior Lewis, the old calf roper, Junior Lewis. Did you know him?
Yep.
He never swung a rope till he's 21 years old.
See, that's the same with Patrick.
Made
Smith.
the finals when he was 21 years old.
Yeah, see Patrick Smith the same way.
Yep.
He was in his 20s.
Well, if they ever decide that's what they want to do or want to mess with it, they'll have a good dad and a good teacher to.
Well, I don't know about that, but they'll have an opportunity anyway.
Yeah.
Where I live now, we built an arena and got a brand new chute and the whole spiel, and then we got out there and they get to fighting like boys do and then jacking around, and my little boy, we had a little Shetland around there, and of course if you're from any kind of rodeo or ranch life and you start on a Shetland, you eventually have some kind of wreck, and he had a pretty good wreck and it scared him, and he really don't want much to do with horses.
Well, that's all right. It's not all that bad of a deal.
No, huh?
I kind of thought I was behind all that horse stuff myself, and then all of a sudden both of my girls, now they both got a horse, and I'm going to junior rodeo or play days and stuff every few days taking them. But
I'm with what we do for a living, we got the country, got cattle turn. They're going to have to learn how to ride horses regardless.
Yep.
And they're eventually going to have to get over that nonsense, regardless if they rope or not. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's great to raise a family in the way of life that you're raising your family.
It really is, especially in the rodeo. When it comes to just people in general, rodeo people, there's not a lot of bad ones out there, if any. And I've got around now. My boys play baseball now, and then we go to they're on traveling teams, and this is pretty serious business. And these people aren't rodeo people. There a lot of these, they're just not. I couldn't understand the first time I went to see the baseball game and an opposing team wishing these other boys bad things. They're wishing them they're preaching for them to not hit the ball or do whatever. Rodeo, I don't ever remember that. I remember everybody sitting on the back of the chutes, patting you on the back, wanting you to do better,
pushing your steer,
whatever you needed.
The only time that happens when you're winning the round and you're standing out on the score line and you put an X in the dirt and you spit in it and step in it. That's the only.
Now, I used to see that at team ropings.
But you're wanting them to win second anyway in the round.
Right.
I would just want to place is all I was wanting to do.
And I think over the years, steer ropers in general is even a notch above everybody else. As far as just good people, you just don't run across too many steer ropers from all the way back to my grandpa's day. They were just always pretty good fellas.
Right, and I agree with that. When I first started it, they were kind of had their own cliques though. You had the Wyoming guys, and you had the kind of these Osage guys here, and then you had the West Texas guys and East Texas guys and the Northwest guys, and they all kind of had their own thing, and they really, the only time is at the rodeos when they kind of intermeshed, but when they had their own individual jackpots, they didn't invite the guys from Texas to Wyoming or Wyoming to Texas or so forth. It just was that way. And then whenever I got into it, I thought that's the stupidest thing I ever seen in my life. I mean, we're here to rope steers, all of us, and let's all get together and get along. And then eventually that's another generation came in. And I ain't been around it in a while, so I'm sure, but they all mesh,
You've been involved with both sides of the arena, though. You were a competitor,
yes,
and you've been a stock contractor,
yes,
too.
Sir. That's another thing everybody needs to get a dose of, too.
Oh, yeah. I know all about that stuff.
I know you do. I mean, if you want to find out your true friends, buy you a bunch of horn roping steers. Yep.
Yeah. You lose a lot of friends right then for just a little while for some reason, but
yeah, they all come back around.
Well, heck, you're real mad right when you don't win something that day sometimes, and you hold a grudge and. Why they bring old 97 back to this rodeo?
That's right.
But, it is what it is.
Yep.
One of those deals that happens.
Yep.
And I think that every roper should get them a little dose of the stock contracting business too. It's not all bad. I think it'll open your eyes a little bit.
I was watching one of them rodeos one time, and they interviewed Clay O'Brien Cooper. And if I had heard this early in my rodeo career, it would have changed a lot of things for me. He was talking about him and Jake and Clay, whatever they were winning so much. They drew a bad steer somewhere for a lot of money. And I don't know, one of them missed him. But Clay O'Brien said drawing bad builds character. And if I'd heard that early in life, because the steer roping, especially then when I started, they didn't have fresh steers all the time like they kind of done later. I mean, they start a set of steers in May or June, and you're still roping them in October. They're pretty wore out, and it's not a lot of fun. And they're big, and they got tricks, and you're needing to win money, and then they're drawing you out of the hat, and you're not. It's very frustrating, and sometimes you do say things.
You get down to that, towards that, after Cheyenne, really it gets really stressful for ropers sometimes, especially
Dodge City used to be the cutoff day.
Yep.
Pretty much everybody went home after Dodge. They entered. A lot of them didn't show up to Dodge, but yeah, drawing bad builds character, and that's all truth to that.
And it gets a little stressful towards the end of the year sometimes. It just happens.
Yeah, you've been riding in the same pickup with the same guy, listening to the same stories for about 3 or 4 months. And
you draw the same steer 3 rodeos in a row that you definitely didn't want to draw.
Yeah.
It's the one you're thinking about not drawing, and all of a sudden you keep getting that booger. So, Jake, have you been self-employed pretty much your whole life?
Yeah, really have.
Jimbo, you got anything for Jake and J. Paul over here?
Well, these guys are a perfect example of the Western heritage we have here in this county. As father and son ranchers, father and son auctioneers, followed each other in the rodeo arena. I mean, it's just, there's so much of that here in this county, and I don't know why.
So in the rodeo business period, there's a lot of legacies,
right.
Father, son, father, son, son, father, son, daughters, there's with the Yateses, they were real popular, father, son, daughters,
You don't see that in the rest of the world. I mean, the business world
you got-
necessarily or anything, but
You got
do
Peyton
more.
Mannings and some stuff like that,
Yeah, a few,
but there's
but-
not very many of them
but-
out there
Yeah, just
compared to
'cause,
the rodeo world.
You know, you're right. I know it. It just seems to follow the rodeo and Western way of life more than other walks in life, and I really don't know why, but it's. And we're just tickled that they came out, and Jake's stories were just fantastic, you know, and we appreciate them showing up.
Well, there's plenty more where they were at. I
Oh
can
yeah,
assure you.
yeah. We could sit and talk to Jake forever.
Oh, yeah.
Hey Jake,
Yes, sir.
when we round these things out, we ask a guy a question, and usually it's some life advice for some younger guys coming up and stuff. But you've been pretty self-sufficient your whole life and done pretty much whatever you wanted to do, it seems like, and I really admire that. Can you give these younger generation a little bit of what it takes to be a self-sufficient man?
Well, I tell you what, it just seemed to me like, you know, the kids are raised not to work, you know, and there's so much dope and stuff going now, and, you know, it's just, to me, it's real hard to raise a kid now, you know, and, you know, when we growed up, you growed up, you had to work, you had to help your family to make a living, or, you know, go out on your own one. And, you know, it don't take very long to learn when you're out there on your own. And, you know, and, but I just said to myself, if you believe in yourself and you believe in the good Lord, you'll make it. And that's my motto, and that's what I go by. And I think that's about as plain as you could get it.
Thank you, Jake.
Thank you.
Those are great words to live by, and I hope all the younger generation or anybody that need to hear those words today heard them. Mm-hmm. You've been around there, you've done it, and you know what's going on. What about you guys? You want to round us out with anything?
I just elaborate on your last question right there. When I had my second child, I was at Winfield at the sale barn. I was back here in the pens, and there was no cow trader come around there to me. He might not be one of my favorite people, but anyway, a man that's been around a lot. And he said, "Hey, you heard you had your second child." And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You're fixing to find out what life's all about." And it didn't really dawn on me at that time, but it does now. I get it. I think I had a lot of opportunity at one time, and I didn't appreciate things. But now that I have two boys, I appreciate them, and I appreciate what my dad's done for me. And at one time I didn't, but now I do. And if I give anybody any advice, try not to live life without any regrets, because they'll eat you up. And whenever you live like that, and that's just kind of how it is. But yeah, I appreciate y'all for the invite here today. This is
Well, everybody's young and dumb sometimes.
yeah.
You
they
turned
are.
you turned into a good man here, J. Paul, and I'm proud to know you. And you're one of my heroes, man,
Yeah.
for sure. Glad to know you too, Jake.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, if anybody wants to find out any more about this great legacy family right here from the Osage County, Jake, he has a real nice bag right here. He's going to be on display in the museum. It's going to have a nice bio for him. And J. Paul, he has a saddle that he won at the Ben Johnson Memorial Steer Open on display here. He's got a great bio, and you can learn all you want to know about these two guys. And we're proud to know them right here. We'll see everybody next week right here at the Cowboys of the Osage podcast. And I just want to thank you two guys one more time for coming. We
Yes,
sure
sir.
appreciate it.
Thank you all for the invite.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. See everybody next week.